have slowed. Two-thirds of its production facilities for missile and drones have been degraded. But the cost to the U.S. administration has been quite high. This has been an incredibly financially costly war. There's been manpower and military resources deployed and expended here. And this is the conundrum that the US now faces, that the Trump administration and Trump himself wants to, quote, finish this war, but is it willing to pay the cost, pay the price to do so? The war has proved quite costly for it. And so that's why we're seeing all this volatility in rhetoric. On the one hand, talks of mediation alongside conversations around how if this doesn't immediately resolve, that they're going to go in and strike. And we saw, in fact, that the U.S. has deployed a bunker-busting bomb yet again within Iran overnight. So this is where the volatility lies. The U.S. faces a double bind. It wants not to have to wind down operations without achieving its full aims, but it doesn't know if it's willing to pay those costs. So there's various escalation scenarios from here, escalation pathways from here, and the likelihood of sort of an off-ramp, as Dan just said, was it's stumbling towards an off-ramp. We haven't yet seen any viable off-ramp really materialize. We know there are no direct talks between the sides. It's only been indirect talks and sort of other regional mediation.
We're hearing, it's being reported that President Trump told aides he might be willing to consider ending the conflict in a way that does not even involve reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Where does that leave the region and the world if indeed he chooses that exit path?
I would be cautious about reading too far into those statements. Of course, they are making quite a lot of noise in headlines overnight because it is a sort of stunning statement. Because now the Strait of Hormuz has really vaulted to the top of the U.S. priority list because of the knock-on effects on energy pricing, energy markets, and the global economy. We know that, in a sense, that if Iran is left not to have, there's no deterrence that's been reestablished over the Strait of Hormuz, Iran, in a sense, is a more volatile, a more dangerous actor after this conflict than it was before, because it has learned lessons through this war, that asymmetry, that the ability to horizontally escalate this conflict to the region and with ground zero at Strait of Hormuz means it's quite effectively reestablished leverage over this conflict, even though, again, it is the more asymmetric, less capable actor in this conflict. So the idea that the U.S. administration would actually just say, we're going to pack up and go home from here, and we're not going to try to reestablish deterrence over the Strait of Hormuz, is definitely worrisome for the region. And I would caution about reading too far into this, in part because the U.S. has moved massive military personnel and kit over to the region. It's unlikely to just have done that and expended all that money and time without any plans around using it. But secondly, because the idea that this could be left in this condition, and that the global economy would continue to suffer, supply chains, not just for energy and oil, but also helium, critical inputs for semiconductor chips, et cetera, would be quite an open question. So I think this is more of a leverage point. The U.S. and the administration is trying to apply leverage, perhaps on Europe, to get it involved, perhaps on the other Gulf regional states, to get them involved in helping reestablish deterrence over the Strait of Hormuz, because, as I said from the start, otherwise a U.S. military operation will be quite costly if it has to go it alone.
Lindsay, from what you're saying, we're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea here. The US can't really walk away right now with the Strait of Hormuz remaining closed. And yet, probably to take Kharg Island, to put boots on the ground, it's going to involve immense loss of life. And as our previous guest, Richard Chiref, the former Deputy NATO Supreme Commander in Europe, was saying, I mean, he actually said to us, this could be America's an Alamo, it turning out to be.
Yeah, there is certainly no doubt that we are in the zone of risk right now, that the risks are incredibly high for the loss of personnel, U.S. military personnel. This is sort of an untested strategy for this administration, right? We know that all of us watched in January as there was this limited military operation to extract Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, very successful. There was under an hour that the special forces were in and out of Maduro's his house. But this is not the same sort of operation that we're talking about. That if they were to sort of to try to invade Kharg Island, take Qesem, or in the sort of long end of the extreme tail, which President Trump has talked about wanting to extract that nuclear dust, the uranium, the enriched uranium, which is deep inside of Iran. These would be very untested military operations that would not be something that could be achieved in 1 hour's time. This would be heavy, intensive manpower, intensive extraction efforts. And then for some of these operations, it would be also involve retaining control over that landmass. So that is a longer term commitment that the U.S. population, the U.S. American voters have not gotten behind this conflict. And so Trump will also have that in his mind. The midterm elections are still quite a few months away, but this conflict has taken a hit on his approval ratings back at home. And 2/3 of Americans say that, this is not something that they approve of. So yeah.
Lindsay, we heard from the president. He thinks there's already been regime change, or so he claimed. They've obviously taken out the former head of state. But yet, and we think that Moshtaba, his son, is in a pretty bad, critically injured state. If the president did want to try and open negotiations with Iran, and we know that the Pakistanis are acting as intermediaries here, who's effectively speaking for the regime here? Is it the parliamentary speaker, or are there others involved? Can we name names here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue here is that Trump's statement that there has already been regime change is sort of a flourish, right? There has not been regime change. There's been personnel change. The regime structure still, for all intents and purposes, persists. We have not seen the regime collapse. We